Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, accompanied by Attorney General Janet Reno, Senator Charles Robb, Senator Joseph Biden, Chief Charles Samara, and Corporal Irma Rivera.
Mr. President, Attorney General Reno, Senators, Mayor and members of the Alexandria City Council, Madam City Manager, federal agency officials, fellow chiefs of police and sheriffs, and law enforcement colleagues. It is my honor and pleasure on behalf of the city and the men and women of this department to welcome you to the Alexandria Police Department. Alexandria is a committed department, and we're committed citywide to community policing. COPS grants and other federal funds have been an important source of support for us, totaling more than $1.8 million since 1994. Nearly half of the officers in our 20-officer community support section have been funded by COPS and other federal grants. With COPS More support, nearly $500,000 for laptop computers and software, Alexandria is developing the nation's first fully mobile computer system for police officers. The benefits to the citizens of Alexandria are notable. Full-time residential or community officers are assigned to 12 areas of Alexandria. In these community policing areas, Part 1 crime was down an average of 20% in 1998 when compared to 1997. Citywide, our crime was down more than 8% in 1998. This is the third year in a row that crime has gone down. 1998 saw the lowest crime rates since 1965, and the lowest violent crime rates in 33 years. We in Alexandria are very proud of our partnership with the federal colleagues in demonstrating that community policing significantly improves the community's quality of life. The National Institute of Justice has initiated efforts to provide seamless communications of voice, data, and images across the nation. We are honored that they have chosen Alexandria as a live demonstration site to test and evaluate emerging technology, such as the Agile Project, which is advanced generation of interoperability for law enforcement. We have recently accepted our first alert vehicle from the Texas A&M Research Center, which is equipped with comprehensive integrated computer and communications technology. These projects will demonstrate the most advanced technology from government and from industry and provide capability that will give officers instantaneous access to information, increasing their effectiveness and safety on the job. Federal grant support, combined with dedicated work of our police employees, has led to more officers on the street, state-of-the-art computer technology, reductions in crime, and a safer environment for all who live and work in this city. We have much work to do, and we will need continued federal support to accomplish it. I welcome this opportunity to express our deep appreciation to the President and to the Congress. I'd like to make one personal note, if I may. Many administrations have supported law enforcement, but none has provided us with more tools to protect our citizens than President William Jefferson Clinton. I thank you, Mr. President. We all thank you. I'm now honored to introduce the Attorney General of the United States of America, Janet Reno.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for your hospitality today. Mr. President, Senator Biden, Senator Robb, Corporal Rivera, thank you, Corporal Rivera, for being here with us today. Mr. President, America is a safer place today than when you took office in early 1993. The credit for that goes a great deal to the hard and very dangerous work of police and prosecutors as well as community leaders across this country. It goes to people like Corporal Rivera and the people that she works with on the streets day in and day out who care so much about their community and about the citizens they serve. But Mr. President, the credit goes to you as well. For as the Chief has noted, you have worked so hard to make sure that communities across America have the tools, the resources, the technology, but most of all, the dedicated and caring people necessary to fight and to prevent crime. No one has done more than you, and it has been magnificent to watch it unfold in these 6 years. For today, crime is down for over straight 6 years. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, it is down in every category, in every region, and for every type of person. This is really good news. Crime statistics can be fascinating, and they serve an important role for us in determining whether we are doing the right thing. But we must never, ever forget, ever, that behind those numbers is a real human being. It really struck home for me recently when Dr. Jan Chaikin, the director of the Bureau of Justice Statistics, told me that what of all of the 1997 crime statistics really translate to are that there are 500,000 fewer victims in 1997 than in 1996. That is a person who was saved from being victimized. Now today, based on Dr. Chaikin's analysis of crime trends for the first half of 1998, he projects that for the first time since these numbers have been counted in 1973, there will be less than 3 million victimizations. Mr. President, 3 million is 3 million too many. We cannot be complacent. We cannot accept that figure, and you have made sure that we will not be complacent and that we won't accept that figure. That's why we're here today. We are at the end of a millennium. We look forward to a new era, and we're going to make sure that we continue to do everything we can to reduce that figure and to take significant steps to end the culture of violence in this nation. Because of your leadership, I think we will be able to do it. Now, I'd like to introduce a man who has worked tirelessly against crime, for good government, and was one of the leaders in the passage of the Crime Bill of 1994, which has made such a difference. A man it has been my honor and privilege to work with because he understands just how important the federal government's participation as a partner is in fighting and preventing crime across America, Senator Joe Biden.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, Senator Robb, distinguished members of the Cabinet and the chief honchos of the Justice Department all sitting there in the front row, and police officers. I'm sure someone's going to ask me, if past his prologue, why in the middle of someone speaking I leaned over and whispered in the President's ear. And I figure I better tell you what I said now, rather than wait till later. What we were talking about is how we kind of got to this point. Chuck Robb was kidding the President earlier and saying that he and I were pushing real hard back in the 80s to prove that my party could be very tough on crime and still maintain the civil liberties that people have in this country, a view we both held and have held without relenting at all, notwithstanding some of our colleagues. And I was reminded that I had written a law that was the predecessor to the crime law of '94 back in '88, and I see some of my friends in the law enforcement agencies out there nodding their head because they helped me write it. And I got a phone call from a guy I had known as a governor who was about to be the nominee of the Democratic Party, a guy named Bill Clinton. I could call him Bill in those days. He was governor, and he was running for president. He called me up and he said, "Joe, I like that crime bill. I think that should be a major part of what I run on. It's consistent with what I've done in Arkansas, what I think we should do." And in classic Clinton fashion, he said, "I've got a few little things I'd like to add about it, but can you come and explain it to me, exactly what you're proposing?" And I went and spent some time with him and some of his people, and without any hesitation, he absolutely, totally enthusiastically embraced the notion, and then, in typical fashion, with the Attorney General, improved it. We had called for the trust fund and all the things that are in here. What we didn't do is we didn't have a specific number, 100,000 cops. He understood better than I had the practical as well as public significance of having that target, of making it clear to the American people that we were not just going to do what we had done before in LEAA, and that is give localities money, allow them to lay off their cops, and then hire them with federal money. And he took it as his cause. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The cops have never had a better friend than Bill Clinton. Never. Never, never, never has that been the case. And he stuck with it. And now we have a little bit of a problem. The crime bill exceeded beyond all of our expectations. I remember telling an Irishman from Boston who was involved and helped me with this thing, I said, "You know, if this thing works, we'll have no trouble continuing," because everybody kept asking me, you local guys kept saying, "Well, at the end of 5 years, what's happened? I mean, what are we going to do then?" And I used to say to you, well, if it works, there'll be a national consensus, and we'll be able to renew the commitment. If it doesn't work, it won't matter. Well, I was wrong about one thing. It worked so well that I'm a little bit worried, and I mean this sincerely, because now I'm finding people getting mildly complacent. Because what Governor Bill Clinton did, and President Bill Clinton then did, is he said the single #1 priority, domestic priority, in terms of us spending money, has to be making the streets safe. This is a man totally committed to education, totally committed to 1,000 other things, but that's the single #1 thing. That's why we had this trust fund. This trust fund said, for every federal employee we commit to, as they, through attrition, not rehire, over 270,000, we'd take their paycheck and put it in a bank account, in effect, and we'd hire a cop or something that would help a cop. But now we're hearing, especially from some of our colleagues, that, look, we don't need this anymore. Well, my plea to you today is to support the President's initiative here, because General Reno has pointed out, and she doesn't like to be called General, I know, but Attorney General Reno has pointed out that this has worked. For example, just in the last year, to give you one little statistic that she didn't give, but it illustrates the same thing, there are 6,300 fewer people murdered in the year 1997 than there were in 1993 before this bill occurred. Just that one statistic. And so the President's come along today and he's going to ask the Congress to do what they should do. He's talking about a budget for the year 2000. We're going to reach 100,000 cops, notwithstanding Moses Heston, who kept telling me on ads that, no, this is just a social welfare bill. We're going to reach it before the end of this year, Mr. President, through your leadership and the incredible, incredible management of this project by Janet Reno. This is one program. Remember what we said, folks. When we passed it, Janet Reno was kind enough to come to my office and said, we got one objective. If there's not, we can't get this form down to one page, don't do it. Remember? One page. It works. There's no bureaucratic anything here. It's working. And now the President's here to ask your help and ask the Congress's help for the year 2000. Not this fiscal year, next fiscal year, because we're designing the budget now. We want to add $600,000 more dollars, $600 million more dollars to the COPS program. We want $350 million more dollars for new technologies, $200 million for grants for local prosecutors who need the help, and $125 million for prevention. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that we'll be able to get this done. But I want you all to keep one thing in mind as I introduce the guy who is the single biggest help in getting this crime bill passed when we were fighting it back in '94, Chuck Robb. And that's this. Remind you, we have short memories. Remember what every editorial in America said. I don't know how many shows and interviews I had to go on when I introduced what was then known in the Senate as the Biden crime bill. They said, this is more of the same. We've done this all the time. More cops, more prisons, more prevention. Well, it's a little bit like what G.K. Chesterton said about Christianity. He said it's not that Christianity has been tried and found wanting, it's been found difficult and left untried. We had never done this before. We never tried to walk and chew gum at the same time. We never said in equal parts, we'll hire more cops. Prior to this crime bill, the total number of cops in the top 20 cities in America increased only 1% over the previous 20 years. We hadn't tried. And the deal was there are over 500,000 cops locally. We said at the end of this, 600,000 cops would have to be in the street, and they'd make a difference. And we'd spend money for prisons. But we also would do prevention. Our biggest help has been cops. Cops have been telling us, spend money on prevention. Not social workers, not do-gooders, who I happen to like and think are pretty darn good, but cops. So the President wants $125 million for community prevention monies. So let's not forget what got us here. That old joke about, you go home with them that brung you. Well, the folks that brung us to this dance are the cops. They sat in my conference room for 2 years and drafted this legislation. The President and the Attorney General improved it. It has 3 parts, though, folks: cops, prisons, and prevention. And the President is touching them all, including my single greatest pet project, the Violence Against Women Act. He funds it. So we need your help. The President needs your help. The Congress has to step up to the ball. Let's not declare victory and decide we don't have to keep the effort up. And speaking of victory, I remember when I first drafted the bill in the early 80s and then came back in the late 80s, and I went to Chuck Robb, because Chuck Robb had a reputation for being a hard-nosed governor, no nonsense, and on criminal justice issues a conservative. I had to convince him, and it didn't take much when he looked at it, that this, in fact, was the way to go. He is the first guy. Had Chuck Robb not signed on to this bill when it was first introduced, and this is not hyperbole, it would have never, ever passed, because he gave it a credibility that I couldn't, because I was supposedly that liberal from the Northeast. This is the guy who gave it credibility. This is one of the reasons why we're here today. If he hadn't been around at the time, I would have never been able to convince my colleagues in the Senate what ultimately only passed with 7 Republican votes. Would have never happened without Chuck Robb. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like now to introduce Chuck Robb.
My goodness, thank you. Thank you, my friend Joe Biden, Mr. President, Attorney General Reno, Chief Corporal Rivera, and all of the both community leaders and certainly the law enforcement leaders and the Department of Justice leaders that are here today. I am delighted to be able to join you. In true senatorial fashion, Joe got more out of 2 minutes than almost anybody I know in recent history. But he was right on the money, at least with respect to the how this program came about and the work that he did with President Clinton and with Attorney General Reno and with all of the rest of his Senate colleagues in making this a reality. But he was also right in saying to all of you who represent law enforcement It was your input and your working with him and with the President and the Attorney General that made it a reality, and we appreciate it. Most of the statistics have already been covered. Those that haven't, I'm going to try to leave something for the President to talk about in terms of his new initiative today. But let me say the way that I measure success with respect to community-oriented policing is that we look at the number of crimes that are not committed. And if you look at the statistics in every single area, murder is down, violent crime is down, even property crime is down. And there is a reason for that. And it's that we have more law enforcement officers on the streets, in the community, bonding with their community so that the likelihood that crimes will be committed goes down. And we have a superb representative of the community-oriented policing today, a young woman who actually, and I didn't realize until I talked to her a few minutes ago, she'd served in the United States Army before coming to Northern Virginia. She actually grew up in Brooklyn, but she has adopted those of us who are fortunate enough to live in Northern Virginia. She has served for 7 years with the Arlington County Police. She has a story that I hope will illustrate for any of those who might not be familiar with community policing why community policing works and why it's important that we're going to achieve our goal, and I'll leave the exact numbers up to the President, but we're going to get to our goal sooner than expected and under budget, and the latter appeals to me just as much as the former does, I must tell you. Without further ado, may I present an outstanding member of Arlington's and Northern Virginia's finest, Corporal, Irma Rivera. I was going to say, I knew I was going to have a blank there somewhere along the line. An outstanding representative of the community-oriented policing and a representative
has given me the chance to continue helping individual people. The COPS program in particular has given me the opportunity to help whole neighborhoods of people. Because of COPS grant, I was able to join our community-based problem-oriented policing section, also known as CV-POP. I was a charter member of the CV-POP team in the Buckingham neighborhood of Arlington. This neighborhood of Garden Apartments had been troubled by a Latino youth gang that had tried to stake its claim on the neighborhood. Though a combination of proactive, persistent police work and community outreach programs, my team chased away the gang members and drug dealers that once had roamed the streets of the neighborhood. After our success in Buckingham, I was part of a new CV-POP team that worked in the Columbia Heights West neighborhood of South Arlington. In this larger neighborhood, we faced challenges similar to those we had encountered in Buckingham. Within a year, we had changed the neighborhood. While initially residents had complained of gang graffiti and violence at our citizen meetings, they now ask for help getting street lights fixed. How did we do this? By working in the same neighborhoods, day in and day out, we developed real ties to the community. We took real steps to fix problems in the neighborhoods. We formed partnerships. We problem solved. We prevented crime. Instead of simply letting at-risk youth find their own direction, we coach sports teams and run volunteer programs to channel their energy in positive ways. Instead of simply diffusing disputes between landlords and tenants, we work with the rental offices to make apartment buildings cleaner and safer. Instead of simply identifying gang members, we develop GRIP, the Gang Resistance Involving Parents program, to teach parents to recognize signs of gang involvement in their children. COPS money makes this possible. The Arlington County Police Department has used COPS funds to hire additional officers so that we can work to improve our neighborhoods. In fact, 13% of our street patrol strength is directly attributable to grants from the COPS office. Thank you, Mr. President, for making it possible for me to fulfill my dream. Thank you for making it possible to return our police to their communities. Thank you for being the first president to take the police truly seriously, to listen to us, and to give us the tools we need to keep our people safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you. Madam Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General Holder, Associate Attorney General Fisher, Mayor Donnelly, Chief Samara, all the members of the Alexandria Police Force, to all the other chiefs and law enforcement officials who are here, the representatives of law enforcement who are here, Gil Gallegos, of the President of the National FOP, Sam Cabral, the International Union of Police Associations President, Ron Neubauer, the International Association of Chiefs of Police President. I am delighted to see all of you. I really enjoyed listening to Senator Biden and Senator Robb reminisce about how this bill came to be. I want to say a special word of thanks, if I might, to the team at the Justice Department, and especially to Joe Brand, who himself is a former chief of police, the director of our COPS program. Thank you, Joe, for doing such a great job with our police officers and departments throughout the country. You know, when I asked Janet Reno to be Attorney General, she had been the prosecutor in Miami. And the main thing I wanted to do with the Justice Department was to deal with what I thought the biggest problem in America was at that time, legal problem, which is that there was a very, very high crime rate, and the violent crime rate was especially high. And I had spent a lot of time both as Attorney General of my own state and as governor. I had run a prison system and watched it explode. I had managed a large state police operation. Then as a governor and later as a candidate, I had actually walked the streets and been in the neighborhoods of New York, Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago, San Antonio, Los Angeles, looking for strategies that worked to bring the crime rate down. And so when I asked Janet Reno to come on, I said, the most important thing is that the local police, the local prosecutors, the local mayors, the people that are out there worrying about the crime rate, they have to know that not only that we are their friends, but we are their partners. And we're going to stop doing what normally happens in Washington, which is that you make speeches and talk tough and nothing happens. I would rather say less and do more. And by 1993, when I took office, we were beginning to see in many major cities crime rates go down because of the development at the local level of community policing strategies. And it is true that we would never have been able to do this without the leadership of Senator Biden and the support of Senator Robb. We finally were able to pass that crime bill to get into community policing, to have 100,000 police on the street, to ban the assault weapons, to build more prisons, to have more prevention programs to keep kids out of trouble in the first place. And I would like to say a special word of appreciation to law enforcement for proving that Joe and Chuck and I were right. You see a guy like Joe Biden up here full of enthusiasm. Wouldn't it break your heart if it turned out to be wrong? What kind of speech? Can you imagine him giving a hangdog speech? It would have been terrible. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for a lot of things, for staying with us with the assault weapons ban, for staying with us with the Brady Bill, which has now kept 250,000 felons, fugitives, and stalkers from getting handguns. I want to thank you for proving that there are people like Irma Rivera out there in America, all over America, who want to wear uniforms and make the streets safer and give our kids their futures back. She was terrific, wasn't she? Let's give her another hand. Thank you. So, we're very happy. If you look there at the reduction in crime on that chart, you see that crime rates overall have dropped to a 25-year low, property crime down, violent crimes declined 20% in the last 6 years, the murder rate's at its lowest level nationwide in 30 years, mostly due to the dropping number of young people with guns. We can take a lot of pride in what has happened and in the strategy that has brought it about. We have seen the impact of more police. We've seen the impact of the prevention programs, of the penalties, the efforts to get guns out of the hands of criminals, the burning out of the crack epidemic, thank the Lord. And we have seen a greater peace of mind coming, probably more than anything else, from the presence of the police on the street, in the neighborhood, in a preventive, cooperative fashion. And that is very, very good. Now, having said all that, I want to go back to a point Senator Biden made. Dealing with crime now that it's down is kind of like dealing with the economy. We've got the lowest unemployment rate in 29 years. But it doesn't mean anything to somebody without a job or to a depressed neighborhood. And given how volatile things are in the world, all you have to do is pick up the paper every day and read about it. We got to stay on the economy. The same thing is true of crime, except in some ways more so. Because yes, the crime rate's the lowest it's been in 30 years, and you heard the Attorney General say that means there'll be under 3 million victims. 3 million people is a lot of people. 3 million families, 3 million friends. I don't know anyone who seriously believes that we have a country as safe as it ought to be. I don't know anyone who seriously believes that we're saving every young person and keeping them out of trouble in the first place. I don't know anyone who seriously believes that we can be the kind of country we want to be if we have to continue these levels of incarceration. If we have to continue spending more and more money on prisons that we ought to be spending on education, on after-school programs, on summer school programs, on keeping these kids out of trouble in the first place. So I say, in spite of all this celebration, what we should do is to say, okay, we know what works. Now let's bear down and keep doing it until we have got this problem as small as it can possibly be. No serious person thinks that we are there. So for my money, what we ought to be doing today is saying, hallelujah, this works. Now let's keep on doing it until we have squeezed every last drop of possibility for peace and security out of this strategy. We are, as you have heard, on time, ahead of schedule, under budget with the 100,000 police program. In fact, we have already funded more than 92,000 of the 100,000 community police. We will fund them all in the near future. And that is very, very encouraging. Now, we also have to deal with the fact, you heard Senator Biden mention this, that our community policing effort is set to expire in the year 2000. I still believe we need to do more. It's still dangerous work. 155 of your colleagues lost their lives in the last year. It's still a numbers game in some places. When we started this 100,000 police program, the violent crime rate had tripled in the previous 30 years, but the size of the police forces in the aggregate had gone up only 10%. So we got the violent crime rate and the overall crime rate coming down, but there's still not an intersection. In other words, the police force is going from 500,000 to 600,000. That's a 20% increase. But we still need to do more. Now, today, I came here to say that in my balanced budget proposal to the Congress, which I will unveil at the State of the Union address, we will have nearly $1.3 billion, an increase of more than $6 billion over 5 years, $1.3 billion for the next year, budget year, to renew our community policing program. This will help to hire and redeploy an additional 30,000 to 50,000 community police officers over that same period. It'll be the best investment we can make in a safe future for our children, and I hope we can pass it with your help. We also, as has already been said, need to make sure that our police officers have 21st century tools to do their jobs. Today, drug dealers communicate by cell phones and pagers. Scam artists work the internet. Gangs carry cutting-edge weaponry. Criminals have the best technology. Police should too. Therefore, today I propose we devote $350 million in the balanced budget to put crime-fighting technology into the hands of police officers. For too long, we have seen some criminals go free because the methods used to gather evidence were not up to date. But when police can report from their squad cars rather than return to the station to fill out paperwork, they spend more time on the beat. When officers can track crime as it happens using innovative crime mapping technology, they can respond more quickly and effectively. Chief Samara has told us what a difference these new tools can make here in Alexandria. And the Vice President has put together a task force to help more communities take maximum advantage of available technology. Police carry a heavy burden, but we know they can't carry it alone. And we have to do more to engage all our communities in the fight against crime, to help win the fight police have been waging so successfully. We also have in this budget additional funds for community-based crime fighting. Everything from neighborhood DAs to work closely with police and residents, to faith-based organizations to help to prevent juvenile crime. And I want to say one last thing about the role of the police. We could never have gotten the prevention funds we have gotten in the last 5 years if the law enforcement community hadn't advocated it. I was astonished when I came to Washington to see how many members of Congress were literally afraid to vote for prevention, afraid that people back home would think they were soft on crime or weak or looking the other way. But when all the people in uniforms who had their lives on the line came up and testified, hey, we cannot jail our way out of this problem. We've got to keep more of these kids out of trouble in the first place. That's the least expensive, most humane, most ethical way to proceed here. You made it possible for these programs to work. One of the things that's really going to help you do your job is something that's going to be in my education budget I announced last week. We are going to triple the funds for after-school programs to keep kids learning in school something positive rather than learning something negative on the streets when during the hours after school the juvenile crime rate soars. None of this would have been possible if the police officers of the country hadn't been willing to come to the Congress and say, hey, this works. Help us keep these kids out of trouble in the first place. So we thank you for that as well. America is grateful for the hard work of our men and women in uniform. Every day you make our streets and schools safer, our homes more secure, and in so doing, make no mistake about it, you make freedom more real for the American people. We know you can't do it alone. We've tried to be good partners. We intend to be better partners as we move to the next century. Thank you, and God bless you.